Hey there. Have you ever felt like an outsider looking in, wondering what it takes to make magic with horses and how other people make magic with their lives? Me too. I'm Paige Lockton from The Magic of Horsecraft, and I like to share what it takes to create safety and connection with 1,000-pound flight animals and explore what it takes to find joy in your shitstorms and get back up after your falls. Turns out, those two things are connected. And what would I know about getting back up after falls and being resilient? A lot more than I'd like to most days. Life's handed me a bit of a rodeo, and like most things, necessity is the mother of invention. I've needed to be resilient, and so I've become resilient. And I needed to study what those wizards in the world of horsecraft were doing to make magic with their horses because I needed it too. Now hold the phone, I hear you saying. At least those of you who don't know my story well. I hear it all the time from people that have just caught maybe a glimpse of my life. They say things like, weren't you born with some sort of voodoo horse magic from generations of horse people? Aren't you the vet's kid who used to soothe wounded animals and that crazy long-legged Canadian rider that would ride anything in that sport 3-day eventing? What is that? That's that old cavalry test of strength and endurance and bravery. What would you ever need to know about magic with horses? I know. Looks can be deceiving, even to a famous psychotherapist. And yes, there's a story. At a special training for equine-assisted trauma therapists in Montana in 2019, there was a famous psychotherapist, Dr. Rebecca Bailey, who knew my history in sport. And she kept looking at me and saying, I can't wait to see you work with the horses. You're gonna be a rock star. And the whole time I was there, she called me, hey, rock star. And so outwardly, I suppose I had her fooled. But there was a horse on the property that I could not fool. Because as much as I was pretending on the outside that everything was fine, it was a little bit like I was living that Monty Python skit where he has no arms and no legs, and he's like, come back here, it's merely a flesh wound. I was at the training just on the heels of 2 bankruptcies, a loss of property. I was homeless. I was freshly separated from a relationship of over 17 years. I was estranged from my children, and there was a lump growing insistently in my left breast, and I still had nearly 3 months to wait for the tests that would give me the results that would ultimately change my life and seriously test my mettle. Now, this wasn't the first time I'd been put to the test. At 25 years old, I suffered the loss of my best friend and fiance as I knew him when the blow of a young horse's hoof threw our lives in equestrian sport and love and our family. I was pregnant then, just a few weeks away from our wedding. All of my life went up in smoke when the young horse's hoof connected with my fiance's head. My ex-fiance is a walking, talking miracle. That he lived through it defied all the odds, and none of the doctors can explain it. But I think I can. It was at his bedside on day 3 when he was crashing repeatedly, and I was alone with him, not saying anything, trying to support him in any way that I could. but feeling really scared when a nurse told me, "You have to tell him what he has to live for. We have done all that we can for him. Now it's up to him and whether or not he wants to live. What does he have to live for?" And I looked at her, and no one knew yet, but at that point, I had a baby growing in my belly. And I said, "I need him. I have a child." And I swear to God that sending him that message on that day and connecting with him and asking him to stay for us made all the difference. His recovery from an exceptionally traumatized brain is a miracle, and it took months and years, and it was grueling and testing, and yet leaving him after that was perhaps a harder thing to do. I had to. At 25, although he survived, he wasn't the person that I knew anymore. He was a miracle, yes. He walked and he talked, but anything that was once Mike was hidden behind layers of this other person that he had become post-head injury. And so leaving him with my young son in tow to return to the north was the first time my mettle was seriously tested. And I thought I'd never find sunshine again, but I did. And I returned to life and sport and had more children. And fast forward, here we are years later. And I'm standing in a corral at the end of the day with a famous psychologist, Dr. Rebecca Bailey. She wants to see me work with this little Mustang named Cimarron. Cimarron, meanwhile, is pacing back and forth and back and forth and back and forth at the fence. It's late. There are onlookers. We were late for dinner. People were waiting for us, and I was the last to go in my group. And that horse didn't want to have any part of whatever ideas we had cooked up in that round pen. And he didn't want to have anything to do with joining up with me. Inside, I was a mess, and he knew it. There was no way I was going to be able to calm his frantic pacing at the gate. And I knew it. And I was set up for failure in front of all of my peers, my new peers, with these high expectations from the rock star of the horse world. Yes, I let them down that day. Yes, it was painfully evident that whatever magic I once had possessed with horses and confidence I had once walked with was just an act, because that horse wouldn't have anything to do with me. I pretended for a moment that we joined up. We walked in the same direction. He stopped, I stopped. I said, "I think that's enough. It's obviously a sign that we joined up." I came out and Dr. Bailey said, "So tell me what happened in there." And I gave her my BS rendition of it. And she said, "Funny, that's not what I saw." And she passed it to one of my peers, who immediately called me out on my BS. And Dr. Bailey just looked at me and she said, "What happened to you?" with curiosity and compassion. Now, we're not here to unpack all of that. It's a lot happened. But we are here to unpack that recovery from this is possible. So what I learned after being called out in front of all of my peers for having lost the very thing that identified me, my ability to soothe horses and to calm them, what I learned was that it was actually accessible and practicable and learnable. Oh, good thing I was there, eh? They had us practice the skills with scientific evidence behind them of what it takes to create safety and connection with another human being, or indeed a flight animal, a horse. If you can do it with a horse, you can do it with a human. And so I learned about heart math techniques and this cool technology that essentially measures your Zen, gives you a method to practice it, eyes open in the moment, and allows you to access your higher faculties and your instincts. It allows you to go into your nervous system that's on red alert, like mine was all the time. Bing, 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 bing. And hijack it and regulate it and own that bitch. Hope I can beep that out. Own it. It's yours. It's your nervous system and you can have it back. So I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, that's a nice story and it's getting a little long, Paige, but what does it have to do with how you can help me? And here is the epiphany that I had. So I understood from that training in Montana a couple of things. One, that we could hijack our own nervous systems, woohoo, and regulate ourselves, but we could co-regulate a horse. That was amazing too. I realized I had been doing it by accident earlier with some things that I used to do intuitively. And I learned that this was the key to turning the mundane to magic with horses. At first, yes, you had to understand them. You had to know how horses thought, but all the knowledge in the world, as I found, couldn't make magic with horses if you didn't turn up like this. This is what those Horsecraft wizards that are so amazing that we all look at with envy, they can't seem to tell us, what it is that's making the magic, no matter how many methods we hear they use. What's standing in our way is this, something that a lot of people do naturally, and it's learnable. It can help you access your instincts and your timing. And I returned from Montana knowing this and really excited to get started. Started writing a book on horsecraft with my dad, and a few things hit all at the same time. Cancer, chemo, COVID-19 all came together to really well and truly test my mettle. I was segregated at a hospital in Sudbury for 5 weeks getting radiation treatment in the midst of the world pandemic, separated from my children and everyone I knew and loved. And I use those skills to help me find joy in my shitstorms. If you look online, you'll find little things called the radiation fashionista. And I used to put on little fashion shows to highlight the green and pallor of my complexion with the outfits I wore to radiation treatment. And I became a specialist in finding joy in shitstorms. That's not something you want to do. It means you have to live through some shitstorms, but hey, here I am. So now, out the other side, I have put together a program as I have learned how to connect with horses again and with humans again after this pandemic. And I've put it into a program to help you. If you're not someone maybe from a horsey family, or you're struggling to make things come together, this program can help you understand and think like a horse. You'll have me accessible inside of group coaching, or if you feel you need it, one-on-one coaching, and it'll help you first think like a horse, understand a horse, and then show up and respond in a way they need you to be a true leader. So if you've been struggling, trying to differentiate between all these different methods out there, and so says this, but the Western world says that, but the English world says this, take it from me. One thing, as the veterinarian's daughter, I saw every ilk of horsecraft practitioner come and go from here. And it didn't matter whether those horses were workhorses or standard breds or thoroughbreds or shaggy kids' ponies, stakes winners. It didn't matter to my dad. He treated them all the same, and that was contagious. I knew that you were all equal too. And so I've learned to look at what unites all of the best horsecraft across all of the disciplines and distilled it down in this course to help you. So thanks for getting to know me. If you want to know more, you can check me out online. I've got a free training. I have a blog. I have a podcast. There's lots of ways that you can get access to me. And if this appeals to you, if you are struggling to have the kind of relationship you hoped it would be with your horse, I can help you. And I'm looking forward to us connecting. Thanks for listening. Happy horsing. And take a chance, because anything is possible. I am a living, breathing proof of it.